Echoes in the ice. Snow whispered across the metal roof of Polaris Station, a thin hush that barely masked the groan of shifting ice beneath the foundations. Months of unseasonable warmth, if any temperature above -20 counted, had eaten tunnels through the glacier. Dr. Elias Rourke listened to the creaks and sighs while he logged sonar readings at 2 in the morning, the only hour when the others finally slept. The vibration under his boots felt different tonight, a longer tremor, as if something down in the frozen dark had started to breathe. He rubbed his eyes and leaned closer to the monitor. A pale smear pulsed on the screen, buried 40 meters below the sub-basement floor. Yesterday, that patch had been solid blue, undisturbed ice. Now it flickered like a heartbeat. He adjusted gain, tracing the outline. Human-shaped, too symmetrical to be a cavern, too large to be an artifact left by previous expeditions. A knock at the door startled him. Dr. Mara Chen stepped in without waiting for permission, parka unzipped, cheeks flushed from sleeplessness. "You're still up," she said, voice a brittle shard. "We need an updated melt model for tomorrow's briefing." "I'll run it after I check this splice," Elias replied, hoping she wouldn't peer at the monitor. Mara set her tablet on the desk. "No, you'll run it now. Glacial displacement is accelerating. If the crevasse by Tunnel 3 widens, we lose half our lab space." He glanced at the heartbeat smear. "I found something unusual in the lower strata. Later." She tugged a strand of hair from her eyes, the gesture abrupt and final. "We stick to protocol." When she left, the cabin's warmth felt strangling. Elias copied the sonar file onto a flash drive, slid it into his coat, and shut down the monitor. Protocol could wait for dawn. The glacier might not. He descended 2 levels of graded stairs, each step echoing off corrugated walls. At sub-basement C, the corridor lights flickered. Frost ribbed the overhead pipe seams. He keyed the security code for Tunnel 3, restricted since Monday's micro-quake, and ducked inside. His breath crystallized. Most crews avoided this tunnel. The air tasted metallic and the walls sang on windy nights. Tonight the ice felt watchful. He followed cable markers until he reached the newly exposed crevasse. A cold draft sighed from its depths, carrying a scent like old seawater and rotting kelp. He clipped a headlamp to his hood and slid down a rope ladder drilled yesterday for geological sampling. At the bottom, the glacier opened into a chamber tall as a cathedral nave. Ice arched overhead in luminous sheets, trapping pale moons of air like frozen bubbles. In the center lay the shape from his scan, encased in crystal-clear ice, arms folded over its chest, hair fanned like seaweed. Not a fossil, not a corpse. More like a statue carved from moonstone. Elias stepped closer, headlamp haloing the figure. Skin, translucent as pearl, shimmered beneath the ice. Fine scales traced collarbones, eyelids shut as though in fragile sleep. He felt a prickling between his shoulder blades, an electric awe stronger than fear. A tremor rippled through the floor. Cracks spidered across the ice coffin. The temperature dropped so fast, vapor plumed from his mouth. He backed away. The glacier groaned, a sound too close to a living roar. Then, with a sharp report, the casing split. Water gushed, rushing over his boots. The figure slid free, glassy membrane peeling away in shards. Eyes snapped open, abyssal black irises rimmed in silver. She gasped, throat emitting a click like grinding ice, and collapsed onto all fours. Instinct trumped terror. Elias knelt beside her. "You're safe," he whispered, unsure whom he was reassuring. She jerked at the sound, wild gaze flicking from him to the dark. Her fingers dug into the slurry. Webbing flashed between them before retracting. She tried to speak, only a breath of broken consonants. "Easy." He shrugged off his parka and draped it around her shoulders. She flinched at the contact, but the weight stilled her trembling. He noted the fine gill lines at her ribs, pulsing open and closed like nervous mouths. Another quake rumbled overhead, sending crumbs of ice cascading. If Mara found the breach now, the station would swarm with alarms, sedatives, containment cages. Elias slid an arm under the creature's shoulders. She was light, bones hollow as a bird's, and lifted. She didn't resist, only stared at him, confusion softening fear. "Trust me," he whispered. He guided her to the foot of the ladder. She watched the rungs with dawning comprehension, then climbed as though memory returned in muscle. At the top, lights flickered as emergency circuits kicked in. Sirens didn't wail yet. Perhaps the quake registered as minor, but he had minutes at most. They slipped into a maintenance shaft and emerged near his quarters. Inside, the temperature was human warm. She crumpled beside the radiator, fingers pressed to her ears at the humming electricity. He dampened a towel, wiping frost from her hair, sea green strands that caught rainbow glints in low light. "Naida," she murmured suddenly, voice low, raw. Elias froze. "Naida, your name?" She pointed at herself, then at him. He hesitated. "Elias." He tapped his chest. Her lips shaped the syllables. As. A tremor passed through her like a ripple of memory. She hugged the parka tighter. Footsteps thudded in the hall. Elias killed the lamp and cracked the door. Jared Hallbrook shuffled past, yawning, headphones clamped over his ears. He didn't notice the wet prints on the floor. Elias turned to Naida. "I need to keep you hidden. Quiet." He mimed finger to lips. She stared at the violin case propped in the corner, curiosity momentarily eclipsing fear. She crawled toward it, flinching as her knees met carpet, skin thin as sheet ice. Elias lifted the case, opened the latches, and drew out the instrument. The strings glimmered under dim light. Naida reached but didn't touch. "Song," she whispered, voice quavering like struck crystal. "You like music?" he asked, heart beating fast. She nodded, eyes huge. He raised the violin, drew the bow softly across a string. A single note hung in the room, pure as distant starlight. Naida's pupils expanded. The radiator hum faded, or perhaps the melody swallowed it. He played a slow phrase, notes trembling at first, then steady. Naida exhaled, eyelids fluttering. Frost veins webbed across the window, etching flowers in the glass. When he stopped, her hand brushed the violin scroll. "Beautiful." "You speak," Elias said, astonished. Words afloat hard. She tapped her temple. Memory. Broken shards. "You're safe here," he said, though safety was a fragile concept under a roof of groaning ice. "Rest." She curled beside the radiator, head atop folded arms. Within minutes, her breathing slowed, gills flattening. Elias draped a blanket over her scaled calves. Legs, but not legs. Hybrid grace. At dawn, Mara's directive arrived on the station intercom. All personnel to the main lab for structural brief. Elias slipped into the corridor, locking his door behind him. Mara's sharp gaze swept the room as he entered late. "Ground sonar shows another shelf fracture," she announced. "We may need to evacuate east modules. Jared, prep the thermal drone." Jared yawned. "On it." Elias kept his features neutral. The briefing ended in brittle silence. Mara caught him by the elbow as others dispersed. "You look exhausted," she said. "Didn't sleep," he admitted, "and take 2 hours off shift. I need you sharp." He nodded, pulse hammering. Back in his quarters, he found Naida awake, studying the violin's reflection in the window frost. She smiled when she saw him, showing small, pointed teeth. He knelt beside her. "You need food." He offered a protein bar. She sniffed, grimaced. He fetched a bucket of water, dissolved salt tablets, and she drank greedily. Voices sounded outside, Jared and Mara arguing near the elevator. Naida stiffened. Elias motioned her under the bunk just as the door beeped. Mara stepped in, eyes raking the disheveled room. "I need the keys to the specimen lockers," she said. Elias fumbled in his desk drawer, passing them over. Mara scanned the floor, her gaze snagged on melting frost puddles near the radiator. Pipe leak? Condensation from the heat surge, he lied. She frowned but left without comment. Naida emerged, breath shaky. Danger, she whispered. Not if we're careful, Elias said, though doubt burned. Stay hidden today. That afternoon, Jared went missing. He'd taken the thermal drone into the crevasse and never radioed back. Mara ordered a search. Elias joined, fearing what they'd find. They discovered Jared's radio cracked, cords tangled in icicles. No blood, no tracks. Just an empty harness near the chamber where Naida had been entombed. Mara's glare accused Elias by default. We need every fact, she said. Did you see anything unusual last night? No, he answered, voice flat. Mara's jaw tightened. Something is beneath us, Elias, and I will find it. Ice groaned above. Elias stared at the void where Naida's coffin had rested, chills skittering along his spine. The heartbeat smear no longer pulsed. It had become the shape standing warm in his quarters. Back in his room, Elias found Naida rocking by the radiator, hands covering ears. Her whisper, barely audible. Voices. Call. Monsters wake. Tell me, he urged. She looked at him, terror dilating her eyes. I led them, long ago, blood and snow. I froze to silence song. She clutched his arm. If I sing now, beasts rise. Outside, a boom reverberated, ice shearing. Lights flickered, alarm klaxons triggered. Elias pulled Naida to her feet. It's starting, he said, breath fogging. She stared up, lips trembling. I will leave. Less danger. Not alone, he said. We find a way together. Through the hall's plexiglass window, he saw dark shapes shifting beneath the ice field, a glimpse of something vast, serpentine. Naida shuddered. He grabbed the violin, slung a pack with thermal blankets. When he opened the door, Mara stood there, pistol raised. I knew it, she hissed, eyes flaring as she saw Naida. You hid the creature. Jared is dead because of her. Naida shrank behind Elias. He stepped forward. We don't know that. She's not our enemy. Mara leveled the gun. Move aside. Ice boomed again, heavier. The floor lurched. Elias braced against the wall as alarms cut off mid-wail. The station's power died, plunging them into dim red emergency lights. In that crimson gloom, Naida's eyes glowed like cold coals. She spoke, voice firm. Monster, not her. Others. Wake. Mara hesitated. The floor bucked once more. A distant girder screamed like a dying wail. Mara's resolve faltered. She lowered the pistol faintly. Elias took Naida's hand. We need to leave now. He led them down the emergency hatch to the maintenance crawlspace. Through floor grates, he glimpsed Mara following, torn between fury and survival. They reached an airlock leading to the ice caves. Elias keyed override. The inner hatch opened with a hiss of frigid air. Naida paused at the threshold, eyes welling. Cold again, she whispered. I won't let you freeze, Elias promised. Behind them, Mara whispered, if we live through this, Rourke, you'll answer for withholding data. I know, he said and stepped into the ice. The gust knifed through the airlock as soon as Elias sealed the bulkhead behind them. Powdered snow swirled along the tunnel floor like white smoke, blurring the edges of steel and ice. Mara stalked ahead, flashlight beam jittering across frost-ribbed walls. Elias followed with Naida at his side, her bare feet barely touching the packed snow, as if she floated instead of walked. Where does this lead? Mara called over the wind. Old supply corridor, Elias answered. It opens into the melt caves behind Ridge 4. There's a maintenance outpost with portable heaters and dry suits. Assuming it's still intact, she muttered. Naida reached, brushing her fingertips along a seam of deep blue ice. Elias saw the spark of memory in her eyes. Pain. Regret. The hint of monstrous longing. He slowed his pace to match hers. Are you cold? He asked. Cold is a reminder. she whispered. Ice used to be prison. Now it's warning. They rounded a bend. The corridor's roof had bowed. Icicles hung like organ pipes. Something thudded above them. Heavy, deliberate. Animals, maybe. Or something older. Mara cocked her pistol toward the ceiling. A muffled moan rumbled through the glacier. Naida flinched, clutching Elias's sleeve. They wake, she murmured. Sea beasts? He asked. She nodded once, eyes glassy. They feel me, they hunger for song. Mara turned on them. What is she talking about? Predators from her time, Elias said, and we have to keep moving. They reached a hatch where the steel corridor transitioned into natural ice tunnel. The door hung crooked, bent from the quake. Mara shouldered it aside. Frigid air rushed through, carrying the briny stink of seawater rising beneath the glacier. The tunnel vaulted 40 meters high, an ancient melt cavern. Starlight filtered through fissures overhead, revealing jutting columns and black pools. In the distance, a faint green glow shimmered. The aurora diffused through yards of translucent ice. Mara's breath puffed in clouds. Outpost is that way, she said, pointing left along a narrow ledge. Stay close. They edged forward. Footing was treacherous, ice polished slick by centuries of drip. Halfway across, a quake rippled the cavern. A fissure snapped open, spitting shards. Mara lost balance. Elias lunged, grabbing her jacket. She dangled over a pit, legs kicking. He heaved, muscles shredding with the strain. Naida knelt, gripping his waist to anchor him. Together they hauled Mara onto the ledge. For a moment no one spoke. Their breaths roared in the silence. Mara pushed hair from her eyes. Thank you, she said to Elias, voice shaky. Her gaze slid to Naida. And you. Naida dipped her head, wary. They pressed on. The path widened into a plateau where an old storage shack leaned against the ice wall, half buried. Its solar floodlight flickered weakly. Elias pried the door open. Inside, crates and fuel canisters were scattered like dice after the tremor. The dry suits were mostly intact. Mara loaded supplies into packs. We fortify here, send a beacon. No signal will reach, Elias said, testing the satellite radio. Static only. Magnetic interference is off the charts. Naida wandered to a frost-coated window, eyes locked on the aurora's ghostly dance. Sky sings, she murmured. Elias joined her. Outside, curtains of green and violet rippled above crystal cliffs. Snowflakes shone like drifting embers. He remembered standing on an Icelandic beach years ago with his fiancée, Mia, watching the same lights. Grief tightened his chest, but Naida's presence quieted the ache. Beautiful, he said. She tilted her head, beautiful and sad. Why sad? Light dances because air is torn, she answered. Beauty hides fracture. He looked at her luminous profile, felt the weight of days spent alone with data and ghosts. A fracture can let in something new. She met his eyes. For a heartbeat, silence enveloped them. Then a cry echoed through the cavern, a deep bellow followed by grinding stone. The shack vibrated. Mara snapped her head up. They're close. Elias checked the fuel gauge on a portable heater. We can't stay long. Naida pressed a palm to her throat. They follow voice, I must be quiet. You saved me once by singing, Elias said softly. Maybe your voice can still save us. Her gaze slid away. Voice kills. Only if sung alone, he said. He unlatched the violin case. When we played together, you didn't hurt anyone. Mara's brow furrowed. Explain what you're planning. There's a trench under the glacier where these creatures are emerging, Elias said. If Naida's voice led them once, a new melody might send them back into torpor. Mara stared. You're suggesting a lullaby for a leviathan? Music reaches parts of the brain older than fear. He glanced at Naida. And older than guilt. Naida's hands trembled. I don't know the melody. Then we find it, he said, lifting the violin. He played a tentative scale. Notes trembled in the cold air. Naida closed her eyes, lips parting. A single tone slipped out, soft as melting snow. Elias layered a third above it, their sounds intertwined, fragile. The shack's frosted window glimmered with tiny fractures, but no shards fell. Mara's jaw slackened. "Keep it up," she whispered. Naida's voice wavered, a ripple of sorrow. Images flashed across Elias's mind. Sunken cities, spears of ice, a chorus of sirens drowning an army. His bow faltered. Naida stumbled back, clutching her head. "Too many shadows," she gasped. The cavern shook. A crack split the ice wall. Freezing water gushed. Beyond the breach, something massive shifted. Black scales, ridged fins. Mara yanked the heater plug. "We run now." They bolted from the shack, bounding across slick ground. A roar thundered behind them, followed by a geyser of seawater. From the fissure rose a beast longer than the station's runway, a serpentine body, spines jutting like broken knives, eyes glowing cerulean. Two smaller shapes followed, thrashing tails that slammed into columns, shattering ice. Naida screamed, not with fear but command. The beasts hesitated, heads swiveling toward her. She stepped forward, hair whipping in polar wind. "Naida!" Elias shouted. She turned, anguish carved into her face. "They hear me. They obey still." "Then order them away," Mara yelled. Naida shook her head. "I can't hold them long. Go." Elias seized her wrist. "Not without you." Another quake toppled a spire between them and the exit. Mara scrambled over debris, disappearing beyond a curtain of snow. Elias pulled Naida toward a side tunnel. They sprinted under falling icicles. The roar of beasts echoed but receded. The tunnel sloped downward, narrowing into crystalline corridors lit only by aurora glow refracted through ice. After minutes of stumbling, they reached a chamber where ice columns twined like cathedral pillars. At its heart stood a frozen pool, mirror smooth. Naida knelt, touching the surface. Water rippled to life, glowing from within. "This place remembers me," she whispered. Elias caught his breath. "Is this where you froze yourself?" She nodded. "Ancient altar. Cold music sealed me." He unslung the violin. "Then we use it again. Differently." She looked up, tears freezing on her lashes. "If I sing, you may die." He stepped closer. "Let me choose." They stood on the ice sheet. Naida inhaled. Her breath shimmered. Elias rested the instrument on his shoulder. He placed her hand atop the violin's neck. Her fingers trembled but settled. "Together," he said. He began with a low drone, bow sliding slow. Naida's voice entered, a hollow, wind-like tone, dropping and rising in intervals that sent shivers up his spine. He added a minor harmony, guiding her up a scale. Walls pulsed with soft blue light. Under the ice, shapes stirred, the beasts circling the chamber. Their roars softened to groans, jaws parting in confusion. Naida raised pitch. The beast sank lower as though lulled by the vibrations. Elias felt his legs weaken, veins thrummed. He pushed the bow faster, shifting into a major lift. Naida followed, her voice brightening, sorrow turning to yearning. The cavern's ceiling glittered. Snowdust fell like confetti. The water beneath cracked, then refroze, sealing the shapes below in crystalline bonds. With a final note, Naida's voice broke, echoing away like wind across emptiness. Silence. Elias sagged, vision tunneling. Naida caught him before he hit the ice. His pulse fluttered. He tried to speak. Blood tasted like copper on his tongue. "Stay," she pleaded, cradling his face. "Stay, Elias." His lips formed her name. Her tears splashed warm on his skin. She pressed her palm to the ice. Soft light seeped into his chest. Warmth spread, easing the stabbing pain. He drew a shaky breath. Footsteps crunched nearby, Mara emerged, weapon lowered, eyes wide. She surveyed the frozen pool, the petrified beasts beneath, Naida hovering over Elias. "What did you do?" Mara asked, voice trembling. "Stop them," Naida whispered, throat raw. Mara holstered the gun. "Then let's get back before this tunnel collapses." They climbed toward the surface. The glacier was silent now, as if holding its breath. At the airlock, Mara keyed emergency override. Wind roared outside. Clear sky, stars bright. The station behind them lay dark, half buried but still intact. Mara faced Elias. "We send an evac flare at dawn. After this, no one will question our report." "What will you tell them?" he asked. "The truth," she answered. "That we survived because a creature chose mercy." Naida blinked, touched by unexpected gratitude. Mara managed a tight smile, then stomped off to inspect the generators. Elias sank onto a crate, exhausted. Naida sat beside him, fingers shyly brushing his. In the distance, pale green curtains rippled across the heavens. He took her hand fully, lacing their fingers. "You saved me too," he said. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Together. The wind eased, carrying a hush that felt like relief. Somewhere deep beneath, the beasts dreamed again, their nightmares sealed by song. For the first time since the glacier groaned awake, Elias believed sunrise might bring more than wreckage. He lifted the violin, played a soft lullaby. Naida hummed along, voice hoarse but warm. The aurora brightened, painting their faces in gentle light. In that fragile piece, hope stirred like an ember in snow, ready to burn against the cold. Dawn crept across the ice like diluted gold, brushing pale light over Polaris Station's battered silhouette. Elias stood on the roof of the generator shed, firing the last rescue flare into the lavender sky. The crimson burst arced high, hissed and fizzled into a glowing smear. Somewhere far south, a satellite might note the signal, but no hum of engines broke the morning quiet. Only brittle flags of steam rose from cracked vents. Mara trudged up the ladder, breath fogging. "Satellite uplinks out for good," she said. "Battery banks ruptured overnight." Elias lowered the empty flare gun. "How long can we last on stored rations?" "A week, maybe." She scanned the expansive ice, now mute after yesterday's violence. "We still have the hover sled. If the wind stays calm, we could reach Cape Artos depot in 2 days." Elias pictured Naida riding the sled, windburn cutting her translucent skin. "She needs seawater more than caloric packs." Mara's gaze softened. "I ran tests on the meltwater where you calmed the beasts. Salinity readings spiked, the ocean's breaching fissures under the glacier. In a few days, this whole platform may calve into the bay." "That settles our timeline," he said. They climbed down and crossed the yard to the infirmary cabin. Inside, Naida sat on a cot, hair damp from the seawater sponge bath Eli had given her. She listened to Jared's old MP3 player, one earbud dangling. The recorded violin concerto washed through tinny speakers. Her lips moved in silent imitation of the bow strokes. Elias knelt beside her. "We're leaving soon." Her eyes met his, stormy but calmer since the lullaby. "Ice-breaking," she whispered. "Soon you'll feel waves again," he said. "Real water." Mara cleared her throat. "Route's risky. We travel light. 1 pack each." She offered Naida a marine thermal suit cut at the calves for her fins, plus a pair of oversized snow goggles. Naida fingered the fabric, confused. "It'll shield you from wind," Mara explained. The tone held professional kindness, an apology for last night's pistol. Naida slid the suit over her scaled legs. The material shimmered as it stretched. The goggles rested on her forehead like a strange crown. Elias slung the violin across his back and stowed sonar logs in a waterproof tube. They stepped outside into blinding glare. The hover sled, a broad platform on twin air skirts, idled at the ravine edge. Mara primed the hydrogen burner. Fans engaged with a rumbling sigh. Naida hesitated at the platform's lip, gaze drifting to the cavern beneath where creatures lay frozen again. "They sleep," she said. Elias touched her shoulder. "And we'll let them dream." He led her onto the deck. Mara took helm. The sled lifted, skimming over fractured snow. Hours passed in near silence. Wind keened through broken ridges. Ice groaned like distant wails. Elias and Naida huddled beneath a tarp, hands entwined. At midday, the horizon flickered with low clouds, the faint outline of Cape Artos cliffs. Relief cracked Mara's tense posture. Then a tremor jarred the sled. Ice ahead shivered, splitting in jagged lines. A geyser of seawater erupted, followed by the serpentine tip of a beast's fin. Another breach to the left, larger this time. The beast had stirred despite the lullaby's hold. Mara throttled, but fissures leapt ahead faster than the sled could dodge. "They're corralling us," she shouted. Naida lurched to her feet, eyes darkening. "They feel me still, my voice leaks." Elias steadied her. "We'll sing again." Her hands shook. Voice weak. "Needs yours to anchor." He drew the violin, bow trembling in freezing air. The sled lurched sideways. Notes screeched. Naida braced herself and hummed a low resonance. Elias matched it with a G minor, sliding into a descending arpeggio the creatures recognized. Water pillars slowed, swirling in confusion. A fin smashed the ice beside the sled, sending shards rattling over the deck. Mara fought to keep the platform afloat. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster." Elias switched to a waltz tempo, rhythmic and hypnotic. Naida lifted her chin, voice rising. Sound vibrated through the sled frame into the ice. Fissures stitched closed, sealing trapped water beneath. The nearest beast recoiled, head vanishing under a froth of slush. But the effort drained Naida. Her knees buckled. Elias caught her but lost the steady bow stroke. The melody faltered. The largest creature surged again, splitting a chasm dead ahead. The sled skidded, air skirts shrieking. Mara yelled, "Brace!" They slewed sideways, skid scraping blue ice as the gap widened. Mara slammed emergency thrust, propelling the sled across the fissure. Rear fans clipped the edge. Sparks spat, but they landed on solid shelf beyond. The beast roared below, but the ice held. Naida sagged into Elias's arms, trembling. "Enough," she whispered. No more voice. "Just a little farther," he murmured. He played a softer pattern, lilting, lullaby gentle. She hummed faintly, tears frozen on her cheeks. Behind them, the fissure stilled. The beasts sank back into slumber. Cape Artos rose ahead, rock walls streaked with ice falls, a battered pier protruding from frozen surf. Abandoned fuel tanks squatted along the ridge, but the emergency beacon still blinked. Mara eased the sled onto the pier, engine dying with a final sputter. Ice beneath them cracked but held. They hurried into the depot, warmth dawning in stale air. Solar panels flickered to life. Mara located a satellite dish half buried under drift. She and Elias erected it on a higher ridge while Naida rested by a heating duct, eyes half closed. The first transmission pinged through after sundown. A Canadian icebreaker 300 kilometers south acknowledged the distress call. ETA 20 hours. Mara exhaled. "We made it." But Elias felt Naida's pulse flutter. Weak, thready. She sat against a wall, staring at her palms, scales dulled. He knelt. "What hurts?" "Voice burns inside," she said, silence safer. He held her icy fingers. "Ooh, we'll reach warmer waters. You'll heal." She shook her head, gaze drifting to the dark sea beyond the pier. "I still carry hunger of beasts. If I stay, they wake again." Mara crouched nearby, listening. "Your presence is the beacon." Naida nodded. "I asked Ice to hold me once, might have to again." "No," Elias said, voice cracking. "There's another way." She touched the violin. "Song carved chain. Maybe song can share burden." "What do you mean?" "Bind hunger to both of us, split weight. Beast will not sense one soul." Elias met Mara's eyes. She offered a helpless shrug. If it keeps the abyss quiet. Naida cupped Elias's cheek. Danger to you. I accept, he whispered. They carried the violin to the pier edge where frasil ice drifted against the pilings. Stars glittered like frost sparks overhead. Mara kept watch. Elias tuned quickly, strings brittle and cold. Naida stepped into ankle-deep water. The sea glowed faint around her calves. She began a hum, barely audible. Elias found a harmony, low and steady. Each measure braided their sounds tighter. Naida's voice grew warmer, less brittle. A breeze swept across the bay, swirling snow devils. The water stilled, as if listening. Elias sensed a tug in his gut, a cold tether knitting from Naida's core to his. Pain lanced his chest, but he kept playing. Notes shimmered like thin threads of silver stretching over the dark sea. Naida's eyes shone. Half mine, half yours, she whispered. He nodded, bow arm aching. When the last note faded, the sea fell silent, peaceful. The tether eased but did not sever. He felt it, a cool weight resting in his heartbeat. Naida swayed. He caught her. Mara approached. The icebreaker signaled. They'll berth tomorrow. Her gaze softened at Naida. We'll tell them you're a survivor from a wreck. I doubt they'll press for details in this place. Thank you, Elias said. That night the three of them huddled by a rusted heater. Wind rattled shutters but no quakes, no roars disturbed their rest. Morning painted the sea pale rose. A distant horn echoed, the icebreaker forging through pack ice. Crew lowered a launch. Medics rushed with blankets and questions. Elias answered what he could. Mara backed his story. Naida, swaddled in thermal layers, kept silent, eyes shimmering with quiet wonder. On deck later, as the ship steamed south, Elias and Naida stood at the rail. The tether in his chest pulsed gently, like a second heartbeat. She leaned into him, gaze on the sun climbing over endless water. Warm, she murmured. He smiled. Welcome back to life. Months passed. Elias took leave from the institute, settling in a weather-blasted cottage on a northern fjord where spruce met rocky shore. He converted a tide pool cave into a saltwater refuge. Naida nested there, venturing into deeper water at dusk, always returning before dawn. He played violin on the porch most evenings, slow waltzes carried on cool winds. Sometimes Naida rose from the waves to hum along. Her voice never again reached the glass-shattering power it once held, but it filled the air with gentle resonance. Mara wrote weekly letters, updates on the Institute's new ethical protocols, hints of grants dedicated to non-lethal study. She ended each note with, "Keep the sea calm, maestro." One autumn night, aurora ribbons unfurled across the sky. Elias sat on the beach, bow poised. Naida surfaced, sea foam glistening on her skin. She sang a lilting phrase, no tremor of danger, only fragile joy. He answered with an arpeggio, weaving hope and gratitude into every note. Colors glowed in the waves, reflecting sky fire. He set down the violin and waded in. Cold bit his ankles, but the tether warmed him. Naida met him waist deep. Their foreheads touched, breaths mingling with salt spray. "You're not afraid now?" he asked. She shook her head. "Voice is half yours, monsters sleep." "And dreams." She smiled. "Dreams are ours to choose." Behind them, lantern light spilled from the cottage window, a promise of warmth. Ahead, the sea stretched boundless, calm for now. In that hush, they kissed, and the ocean folded around them like a silent vow. The song that once froze worlds had become a lullaby shared, echoing softly among waves and wind, carrying both monster and man toward something gentler than redemption. A life composed together.